Going live is what they say. YouTube says, right now, YouTube says we are live. And so, hello everyone. Hello, how are you? Glad you are here. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you taking your time on a Wednesday evening to hang out with us and hang out with all these wonderful people in the chat. Again, I always say this is one of our most favorite times of the week, is hanging out with you all. So thanks for being here. Hopefully you can hear me.
Everybody say hi to Noelle before she possibly has to leave.
Hello,
hi,
Noelle. Glad you're here. So yeah, if you can hear us, just let us know in the live chat so that I know that we're actually, we can hear. Audio and video good, says Clint. Thank you so much.
All right,
Riddle, thank you. For our moderators for being here. You guys do a lot of work. Thank you for that. So tonight we have what I think is going to be really interesting. I think it should be a cool live stream. I've got a number of different things I want to talk about when it comes to buying fish and the advantages and disadvantages of different places. There's a lot of options, and sometimes these options are overlooked. And so I'm hoping that by going through this stream, we'll do some Q&A afterwards. We have all of the options, and at least from our experience, and we'll talk about your experiences as well. I see Creative Pet Keeping is in the house somewhere.
Ooh,
Kasha, yep, there she
Kasha.
is. Thanks for being here. Glad you're here.
Hey, Banana.
Hello, Banana. For those of you who don't know, I mean, this is kind of old news for some, but Kasha and Daniel got recently engaged a few months ago. That's
right.
Big news, awesome news. So we're really excited about that. All right, so announcements. First of all, does the back mean anything today? Because we kind of skipped that last week and you yelled at me about it.
Frequently I add little funny things that you don't even know are there. No. But today, no. It's basically the last time you're going to see this, and I'm going to switch it up.
Like a major switch up?
Oh, like a major switch up.
That makes me nervous.
You should.
So we'll have a major switch up for you next week. The second thing is you had a video come out this morning on the Small Scape, your channel. It was all about things you can find at IKEA.
Yes.
For mostly water gardens and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But very cool video. By the way, Nicole, thank you so much for becoming a primetime partner. Glad you're part of the crew. Thanks for being here. We've got that coming up. Friday's video I'm pretty excited about. I just did the outline for it today, and I think it's going to be cool. It's a kind of a culminating video on an entire playlist, and so I'm hoping to summarize a lot of what I've talked about in this subject that I will not name right now, but I'm hoping to summarize a lot of the information in this one playlist in one video, and it will help people make good choices. And then Saturday, you've got a video coming out, a short one, on the Small Scape. That should be pretty awesome. So, yeah, that's what's coming up for us this week. So,
wait, can I give them a hint?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's your channel. You can do whatever you want.
For Saturday, I don't have the official name yet because everybody gave me lots of different really great ideas of what I should call my Saturday videos because they're short and they're fun and they're goofier than normal. It has to do with the pet. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, yeah, thanks. We're really happy about that. That makes us really excited for the whole situation. So it's about a pet. Mm-hmm. All right, good. So anyway, we want to talk about buying fish. That's our plan today. And there's lots of options. So here's how I kind of want to break this thing out as we go through the stream today. And that is, let's talk about the different options that we have. I mean, we've got the local, well, not all of us, but many of us have a local fish store. We have the big box stores like the Petcos and PetSmarts of the world. We can buy things online, and there's a lot of options there. And then the often overlooked aspect, and it's not available to everyone, are the fish clubs and auctions. And so we've utilized them all. We've utilized them all fairly extensively. And so we wanted to share some of our experiences, some of the advantages and disadvantages of doing those things, and would love to hear from you as we go through. What are your experiences in these different options as well? And if maybe you've done something different that we haven't thought about. And what we're going to be looking at for each one. I want to look at, okay, what is the most likely in terms of health of the fish? We're going to look at price. We're going to look at, what kind of guarantees do you get? So if you bring the fish home and they're not doing well, what can you do about that, right? We're going to look at varieties, right? What kind of fish can you get from these different places? How knowledgeable are the people that are selling the fish in these different avenues? And then, of course, we're going to look at, okay, well, is this convenient? Is this something that is even possible for a lot of people? And so that's what I wanted to talk about. And hopefully as we go through this conversation, we're going to learn a lot. And again, in the chat, I definitely want to hear your experiences as we go through these things, because there's so much variation in each one of these different options that we have. And so I think the first one I want to talk about is the local fish store. For us, the local fish stores around here they're very different. And so I hesitate in making generalizations. Right, Clint, thank you for the super chat. Buy all the fishes. Appreciate it, man. You can certainly do that, and then you wind up with lots of tanks, right? So with the local fish store, there's so much variation there. And you can go to one and be like, wow, it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then you can go to another one and be like, wow, I walked in there and the tanks were dirty, the place smelled bad, and the people were rude, and it was crowded and stinky and all kinds of stuff, right? But when it comes to a local fish store, we can make hopefully some generalities. And that is the first thing when it comes to the health of the fish. It can be hit or miss anywhere. But I would say when you're comparing them to other options, the nice thing about the local fish store, if, and not many of them do this, but if they're doing it right, maybe they're doing a little bit of quarantine. They've got some employees. Obviously, the fish store is dedicated to fish, unlike maybe some of the big box stores where they've got all kinds of other things to deal with. And we'll talk more about this later, but they may have somebody who just quickly runs through and just glances at the tanks. Where a local fish store, they're going through, they're looking for tanks that maybe aren't really all that healthy, maybe shutting off the lights in that particular tank, saying, hey, sorry, we can't sell fish out of this tank. And so in terms of the health of the fish, now for us personally, we tend to have fairly decent look at one of our local fish stores where for the most part the fish are relatively healthy. But there is another local-ish fish store. It's not quite a big box store, but it's not quite a single location either, where a lot of times we go there and it's almost a guarantee that your fish are going to wind up with ick. And so I tend not to buy fish there as often, but again, it can vary. Right. And so the other thing, too, is it considers the price. A lot of times the local fish stores might be a little, at least for around us, they're a little bit more expensive than the Petcos and PetSmarts of the world. But the prices are decent. Now, keep in mind, again, when we compare them to maybe online or the swaps and auctions, they've got overhead to deal with. And so you're probably not going to find the prices at a local fish store as being the absolute cheapest, because they've got to pay people, they've got the heat, they've got the rent, they've got all these things they have to do. And I will say from the outset, if you're lucky enough to have a mom and pop, like a single location type of local fish store, if they are doing a good job, I think it's kind of important to try to support them as best you can. I'm not saying, hey, go out and pay twice as much for a fish just because, well, they're open. But when you can support them, I think it's a good thing to do, because especially in this economy, a lot of these stores there's a challenge there. And they've got a lot of competition now with all the other things we're going to talk about today. And traditionally, at least in the hobby, they've been kind of an anchor point. And they do struggle sometimes. And so if you've got a fish store that's doing it right, it is absolutely a great thing if you can go ahead and support them. Now, when it comes to guarantees, that, again, really is up to the fish store. But a lot of times, at least with the stores around us, if you go there and you bring in some fish and within 48 hours, they're like, yep, they died. And you bring them back to the store and be like, yeah, I bought these fish from you two days ago. Here's the receipt. They're dead. Often they will replace them. Sometimes they're going to want a water sample and say, okay, well, yeah, we'll replace the fish, but let's make sure it's because you didn't cycle your tank and you've got an ammonia or a nitrite spike, and that's why the fish died. Because that's not on them. That's on the fish keeper at that point for not understanding how to properly keep fish. So that can be a definite advantage over some of the other things we're going to talk about in a minute. Variety. Mm-hmm. I would say like one of them, right, is got amazing variety. The problem is the pricing on some of their fish. You really have to know the market and know what you're looking for, because you can easily pay 5 times more for some of the fish because they've got a lot of overhead, lots of tanks, a lot of variety, but it comes at a serious cost. While at one of the other local fish stores by us, the variety isn't as great. In fact, it's actually fairly poor. It's one of those ones where you walk in there, and we would go in there weekly, and for a while it's like, oh, that's pretty cool, there's something new. And then it was like, after a while, like, we're seeing the same stuff every week. And then you'd go in there monthly, And then maybe every, few times a year, I'm like, wow, you know what? I haven't been here in 4 months, but the last time I was here, it was all the same stuff and half the tanks are empty, right? So when it comes to that sort of thing, it really does depend on the fish store. And in some cases, with these local fish stores, they have to make sure they're buying fish that sell, right? And so, yeah, you're always going to have a fish store that's got the platies and the swordtails and the guppies and bristlenose plecos and angelfish, because they know that a lot of certainly beginners like some of those fish. But it's also nice to have a little bit of something that kind of draws you in and be like, I haven't seen those in like 5 or 6 years. I'll take some of those, right? Mm-hmm. So it really does depend on the store. I find that the local fish stores do, out of the things that we're going to talk about, one of the strengths can be their knowledge. And most of the individual kind of family-owned mom and pop stores, these are people who love the hobby. And often they are a great resource for knowledge. A lot of their employees, sometimes they take a little bit more care in training their employees, making sure that they understand the fish that are going to be sold. And so I have found, at least around us, the local fish stores in terms of knowledge are still a pretty decent source. When it comes to convenience, it really just depends on your area, right? I mean, you've got to make the drive, and sometimes that's 5 minutes, sometimes it's a half hour. Now for us, our local fish store there's actually a couple of them. They're in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who don't know this, we live outside the Chicago area. So our local fish store, when we want to go, is like, maybe an hour and 15? Hour and 20 minutes?
Like an hour and a half.
Okay.
But it's by my sister, so it's a great excuse for
right.
both.
But we head up there because there's a couple stores up there that we really like. Mm-hmm. And we like the variety. The prices are decent. We bring home the fish. They're generally healthy. So that's just something that we enjoy.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you, T-Bone Fishes, so much for the super chat.
It's
really
fishies.
Appreciate Fishies.
T-Bone's Fishies and a cool sticker.
And a cool sticker.
Look at him.
That's awesome.
He's cute.
I like that sticker.
I like stickers like that too.
All right. So that's the local fish store. Now, let's get to some of the other things that maybe are either a little bit more controversial or a little less known. Are you going to pop?
Hold on a second.
All right, hold on.
Everybody hold yours.
You better show people that that's not some kind of
a
drink that shouldn't be on a live stream or something.
I'm just having my bubbly.
Okay. All right, now that we got that out of the way. Okay, what about the Petcos and PetSmarts? This is a little different, right? And by the way, this can also vary as well, but I have found, at least compared to our local fish stores, the health of the fish are not quite the same. Now Daniel's got the
like him too.
The sticker as well.
Look,
Thank you.
They're the same character doing different
So
things.
when it comes to the Petcos and PetSmarts of the world, at least around us, the health it can be a little bit rough. We generally don't buy a lot of fish there. Every once in a while we will, but it's very rare. However, the prices, I think what draws people in sometimes is the prices tend to be, of the options that we're going to talk about, they tend to be fairly low. I know when I price compare my local fish stores compared to like the Petcos and PetSmarts, they're cheaper. But again, not everything is just the price of the fish alone, because you have to think about, if I bring these fish home and they're not as healthy, am I going to be spending money on meds? Am I going to be spending money on taking fish back? Am I going to accidentally put these fish into a tank without quarantining them? And now I've lost not only the fish that I bought, like the worst feeling in the world, maybe some of you can relate, when you have that momentary lapse of judgment and you don't quarantine the fish, you're like, oh my gosh, I got a really great deal on these neons. They were $1 a piece and I bought 20 of them. I only spent $20. I got 20 neons, and you throw them in a tank. And you start to realize, wow, I just put these fish in a tank and I've got I don't know, let's, like in our case, we've got a Geophagus that could be worth $75, and we've got some fish that retail for hundreds of dollars, and now you just put this in that tank, and it's like, often what happens is those fish bring in a disease that kill your really awesome fish. You're like, well, I got half my neons, and all my other fish that I really loved are now in trouble. So it's not just the cost of the fish outright, it's what's going to happen once you get the fish home. Is it going to add any more cost? Mm-hmm. Multi-tank addiction, thank you so much. New plywood tank is clouding up. Drain the wet water test, zero ammonia. Any ideas? Hold on to that. Make sure that you
I got it.
You got that, because we're going to answer that question, I promise.
I got you.
So the guarantees, they do have guarantees, right? At least the ones by us, I think it's either, is it 7 days or 4 days or something like that, where if you show the receipt and you bring the fish in and say, hey, this thing died on me, they will usually replace it. I found the variety to be very poor in Petco and PetSmart. I mean, that's one where, and for a good reason, Petco's and PetSmarts, they know their audience, they know their customer base, and their customer base is often going to be people who are just starting out. And so they're trying to bring in fish that are going to be relatively hardy, that are going to be economical for them to bring in, where they can sell these to customers. And so there's only been a couple times where I've walked into a PetSmart or a Petco and like, oh, they have these? Are you kidding? That's pretty cool. Usually you go there, it's like they got the little goldfish section. They have the imbunas, maybe some mixed peacocks. They've got their live bears, maybe a few tetras, and I don't even know what else. Maybe a couple snails and things like that, and of course the Betta wall.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what you're getting, right? That's what you're getting there. Knowledge. I know some of you have got stories, but the knowledge can vary dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to be clear. There are people who are part of this community on this channel who are Petco and PetSmart employees, and they're very knowledgeable. I've talked to them in some of the chats and stuff like that, or the comment sections, and they're there just learning about things. So there are definitely some people there who have got some knowledge, but unfortunately, a lot of times what you wind up finding is maybe compared to a local fish store, I have found, just generally speaking, the knowledge isn't quite up to the level that you might find somewhere else, right? I guess the nice thing is, convenience-wise, a lot of the metropolitan areas, urban areas have at least one Petco or PetSmart somewhere in the area, which is pretty cool. So we've got that. Jackie, thank you so much for being a member, becoming a member. Appreciate it. Glad you're here. All right, let's talk about some of the things that are a little bit less common. One is online. And so when it comes to online, there's a lot of things going on there. And so if we start with the health of the fish, quite frankly, you don't know what you're getting unless you're looking at reviews from people who have actually purchased fish from that seller, right? I mean, and there's lots of different options. I mean, you've got the bigger companies that sell online. You've got Aquabid. You can do, there's all these different options, and sometimes people, I see it all the time in forums. Hey, has anybody bought fish from this place? And you'll get people like, oh yeah, they were fine. And you get like 5 or 6 people like, oh my gosh, it was horrible. The fish showed up and 5 out of the 6 were dead, and I had a hard time, getting a refund and all this stuff. I will say, I want to be very clear about this. We are sponsored by Flip Aquatics. They do sell online, shrimp, fish, plants, nano fish. And one of the reasons why we are partnered with them is because I absolutely know that they stand behind their stuff. And I've been to their facility, and we don't just accept anybody to sponsor the channel. That's why we've only got 2. We've got Flip, we've got Fritz. That's about it, because we need to know that if I say something to a group of people, especially our listeners, I don't want to ruin my credibility and say, go here, this should be great. And then all of a sudden you go, and like, hey, thanks a lot. You know what? You told me that this was going to be fine, and I had a horrible experience. I'm out, right? So that doesn't do anybody any good. But I know, places like Flip Aquatics are good for online, especially nano fish, shrimp, and plants. But when it comes to, now the nice thing is, when it comes to the price, often, at least in terms of the fish, this is out of the 3 that we've talked about so far, I often find the prices to be, at least for the fish, the least expensive. The one issue that you have to deal with, of course, is the shipping. And a lot of people are surprised when they order fish, right? They got all the fish in their cart. This is going to be great. And then they estimate the shipping cost, and it's like, oh, wow, that's pretty dang expensive, right? Once you get that shipping cost in there, all of a sudden you've got a lot more going on there. So you got to be careful there and make sure you're including the shipping costs in with the price itself. Now, when it comes to guarantees, this is another area where it might not go quite as far. And the reason for that is you're getting these fish, and often for a lot of online dealers, they say, okay, you know what? If you've got fish that arrive dead, take a picture of them in the bag. And I can't stress that enough. If you order online and you receive fish that are in really bad shape, even if they're not dead, they're laying on their side, they're kind of half floating upside down, they're breathing rapidly, take out your phone, take a short 5-10 second video and say, okay, I just got these fish. They'll know when they have been delivered because they'll get the notification. I just got these fish. 3 of them are breathing heavy. 1 of them is laying on its side. It's not dead yet, but it's going to be. And if the online dealer is reputable, if they stand behind their product, they're going to say, okay, yeah, clearly these fish are not dead yet, but they're in bad shape. If you want to try to put them in a quarantine tank and they make it, great. But if 2 days from now, if you notified them with a video and said, this is what they look like, and you go back to them, hey, I lost all those fish inside of 2 days. In my opinion, an online reputable dealer will hopefully reimburse you for those fish, either replace them or at least give you back your purchase price.
Yeah.
Right, but it can be a little bit tricky. But always, 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 when you get the fish, if you see any problems, do not take them out of the bag. Pictures and especially videos so that you have something to go back to that online retailer with and say, this is what has happened. All right. So variety. I think this is the strength of online because nowadays with the internet, you can go out there and search just about any type of fish that pops into your brain and say, oh, hey, I wonder if anybody's got these types of fish. You type it in, you Google it, and next thing you know, you're coming up with different retailers that might have had them or had them in stock at one point, which means you can call them like, hey, I know you have these fish in stock. Can you get them again? The other thing is Aquabid, right? A place like Aquabid, again, you're dealing with direct sellers there, and there's just so many options. And so that's pretty cool. And I suppose, going back to the local fish store, if you've got a good relationship with them and you're looking for fish, you could ask them, hey, listen, can you order this fish? And they can look at their wholesale list and see if it's available. And certainly that might be an option as well. By the way, hold on, I want to scroll up here real fast and let you know, okay, we did see another super chat come in. Ricky, thank you so much. I will answer that question very, very soon.
I'll get that one too. I got it.
Okay, so again, when it comes to online, variety is awesome. Knowledge, that can vary. If you're dealing with a larger online retailer, you don't know where they're at with these fish. They just bring them in from overseas and they've got them in a large grow out tub and now they're just moving them out. Or is it somebody like, maybe sometimes you go to Aquabid and these are people who bred these fish, right? So they've got a breeding group or a pair and they can pretty much tell you from life to death what these fish do, how they breed, what they eat, where their water parameters are at. And that can be really helpful to have that kind of backup, right? Now, there are in some ways it can be a little bit inconvenient in the sense that you have not only when you order those fish, most online retailers are hopefully, especially if the weather's a little bit cooler, they're going to ship those things overnight, but you got to be there, right? So you have to make sure that you are there to take delivery. Otherwise, they were not going to drop those off at the door. That can be a bit of a problem. So that might mean for people who normally work during the day, hey, I've got to take off some time from work. Hope these fish show up, knowing that we're depending on the shipping company, and sometimes they don't show up. And I burned one day to take a fish delivery. They never showed up. I have to be there tomorrow because now the issue is now they've been in a box 24 hours longer than they should have been, and that's where we can run into problems. So there's some risk there to be sure. The other thing in that is I saw that pop up in the chat like really early on, and that is weather. For us, we kind of do this thing where we wouldn't order fish online right now because in the Chicagoland area, it's January, it's cold. If an online retailer really knows what they're doing, then they'll put the heat packs in and make sure they have the right number of heat packs that have the right amount of time so it gets to your door and the fish aren't freezing. If it's the dead of summer and it's 90 degrees from shipping to the delivery location, they might put some cooling packs. But for us, we don't take that chance. We generally do not order online in the wintertime. So when it starts getting, when I know the temperature is going to get cooler, I'm not going to do that. Now, what we will do is that's when in the wintertime, we tend to order a lot of our frozen foods because I don't have to worry about them thawing and then having a bunch of frozen bloodworms and brine shrimp and all that stuff that is nasty sitting out on the front porch because that can happen. So online is great. And but you really have to do your homework, right? And there's that little bit of, you don't necessarily, you're not there picking out the fish. And so what happens if you order 5 or 6 or 7 fish and like, wow, you know what? 2 or 3 of them came in really skinny. They came in smaller. I've seen scenarios where people are like, hey, I want African peacock cichlids and I have an all male tank, so I need all males. But then you're kind of in this gray area where you're like getting 2.5 or 3 inch fish, and it can be a little bit difficult to determine for some peacocks, is this a male, is this a female? And next thing you know, you wind up getting 2 or 3 females, and now you've got a problem. Because 1, they don't look good like your males do. And 2, now you've got issues with potentially breeding, which could mess up your tank. So real quick, Melissa, thank you so much for the super chat. Keep on keeping on. You guys are a gift to so many people. Hope you know that. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. I think to get this on the other side, I think you guys being here is what's the coolest thing. I say it all the time, and it really is. Last one I want to talk about, and this is one where even if you don't have this, you should definitely consider getting a group of people together in your area and trying it out, and that is the fish clubs and auctions. In many ways, this is probably the best of all worlds. One, they're fun because you can learn from one another. A lot of times at these fish clubs and auctions, I keep my mouth closed and my ears open, and I just listen to people who have more experience than I do. And the only time I open my mouth a lot of times is to ask questions and listen. And I find that to be a very enjoyable experience. And the cool thing about fish clubs and auctions, at least the ones that we have around us, which is the Greater Chicago Cichlid Association, the Greenwater Aquarium Society, the Chicago Live Bearer Society. These are fantastic clubs with people who have got incredible amounts of experience. And so when it comes to the knowledge, there is no topping that, none at all. You're dealing with people who breed these fish, who've bred potentially lots, in some cases hundreds of different species of fish. And so they really understand the differences between certain peacocks or certain South or Central American cichlids, or if it's like the Live Bearer Society, they know all about goodeids and different types of swordtails and mollies and platies. And it's interesting because early on in my fish keeping career, I always assumed that mollies need brackish water to do well, because you always, at least for me, we always see them at the fish store and they're doing the death shimmy, right? They're in the top of the tank and they got their fins clamped and they're doing what I call the death shimmy. And that has historically been, okay, well, they need salt. That may be true if they've come and been bred from brackish water. But as I started to talk and learn more about mollies in particular from the Chicago Live Bearer Society, I realized most of them are breeding these things in Chicago water. Our black mollies there's no salt in that tank. You've seen it. It's a 50-gallon low boy. They breed like crazy. They live a long time. And we've gotten lots of live bears, especially mollies from that club, and realized, wow, it's not really a salt thing. It's just where were they bred and what kind of health do they have when they start out makes a big difference. Here's the best part. Price. There is no comparing price. When it comes to swaps and auctions, people ask us, where did you get those fish? Where did you get those fish? And unfortunately, I feel bad because I don't have go here to get them sort of answer, because I would say, what would you say the percentages of the fish in our fish room that we've gotten from that currently are in our fish room that are from fish clubs and auctions, the swap meets, the monthly clubs?
85 to 90%.
At least 85 to 90%. And probably as of, they haven't been open as much this past year, but before everything shut down, it was way over 90%. Like we almost never get fish from anywhere else because, one, I can only recall 80 tanks. For those of you who watch the channel, you know how many fish we have in our fish room. With 80 tanks, 70 to 80, depends on kind of where we're at. 90% of our fish come from the fish clubs and auctions. And I would say, I know of one time for sure where there was a visible health issue after we got fish home where I was like, oh man. And that's it. So we've had, because these fish are coming from other club members' tanks. And so they've got a fish room. They're caring for their fish. They're breeding them from the start. The nice thing too about, you're in a fish club. And so it's not like, for the most part, the people who come there are not going to be like trying to mess over their fellow club members, because you know where to find them. Everybody kind of knows everybody. Even in the larger clubs, it's like, and I always tell people when I bring fish to the meetings, hey, if anything happens, let me know, because for the most part, the people in the clubs are not trying to cycle a new tank with their shell dwellers or something. It's like, something happens, just let me know. And that's just kind of the way, at least that's the way our clubs kind of handle things. So variety is, it's second to none. Like we have at the GCCA, we have rare fish auctions. It's where I got the Furcifer rezebas. It's where I got the jumbo cyprichromis. I get all these very rare fish from the clubs because, and especially what's cool is when they have the rare fish auctions, guess what happens a few months later? The club members breed those fish. Guess where they wind up?
Cha-ching.
Back in the club as a BAP or a Breeder Awards program entry, where club members, they breed fish, they hand in 6 or 8 of them, depending on the club. The club gives them points, right? Kind of like street cred for breeding different species of fish. And then at the end of the meeting, they just sell those fish back to the members. You would not believe the prices I paid for some of the fish at our local, especially our local meetings, our monthly meetings. You can, I mean, for just a few dollars, you can get I think the last time I bought angelfish from the Greenwater Aquarium Society, I got golf ball sized angelfish that were pretty, the pearl scale and the veil tail and the marble. And there was a couple others. And I think I paid like $10 for 5 angelfish. And we've gotten cichlids, like nice cichlids. I think the rusty cichlids that we got came from a GCCA meeting. I think I might have paid like $3 or $4 for a bag, an entire bag of fish, right? So the prices are, there's no beating that. And so if you have a fish club that is running in your area and they're holding auctions and they're holding swaps or they're doing monthly meetings, that is absolutely something that I would look at. Now, the downside is they don't have every type of fish, right? You're not gonna, if you're going to a cichlid club meeting, you're not going to expect to walk in and be like, yep, just found me a bunch of Cory cats, right? You do have to go there, right? So it's not like something they're going to deliver or anything like that. So those are, I would say, the options, the ups and the downs, the pros and the cons of the different things. Now, yeah, so we've got some questions. We've got a couple super chats I wanted to get to. So multi-tank addiction was, what was that one?
Did
you?
No,
you. Okay.
No, I mean, I got it for you. But first, I have to. Michael said OMG or LOL, I forget. He didn't realize that you had a 2-tone beard. It's not 2-tone. It's more colors than that.
It's like 5-tone.
Yeah.
By the way, that was like when I was a kid, my hair was kind of that way too. It was like kind of like it was mostly blonde and at some point like almost like white, like bleach blonde. Then we get a little tan. There was even like a little hint of red in some parts of I was like a mutt. I was like a calico.
Oh, you're just an older mutt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, now I'm just older. All right,
okay.
So hold on.
Ready?
Multi-tank addiction.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. New plywood tank is clouding up during the water test, 0 ppm, ammonia. Any ideas why?
All right, so is the tank like brand new? Are we talking about like I just put water in it and things are settling down? So if it's just been a few days, wait it out, especially if there's no fish in there, right? If there's no fish in there and you're not worried about the health of anything and it's just cloudy because things got set up. It could be a million reasons why, right? It could be whatever substrate you used, maybe it clouded up the tank. Maybe you've got some rocks in there that kind of release some stuff. Sometimes people will put a new filter in and they've got some biomedia that gets a little chalky and that sends a bunch of stuff out into the tank in combination with all of those things. And sometimes it's just the water just needs to settle. And I have found, especially early on, if there's no ammonia and no nitrite, I give it like a week. And if it's still cloudy after that, yes, definitely you said no ammonia. The nitrites can be a big contributor to cloudy water. Just give it time, especially if there's no fish. That is often a really helpful thing. Okay, next one.
Next one, Ricky. All right. Hey guys, I have a pair of discus, my first discus. How exciting. And they're laying eggs.
Wow.
4 times now, but I can't get them to fertilize them. They are in a tank with 3 sturbi and 15 cardinal tetras. Help.
Okay, so first of all, cool that you have a pair of discus. That is awesome. That are actually breeding. That is cool too. The first thing is the water parameters for the discus. Is the water on the softer side? Is it a lower pH? I'm not saying you have to be crazy with the pH and but what happens, and I've mentioned this before, and one of the things and by the way, one of the things you learn at these fish club meetings is they have people come in, professionals come in and speak. And there was one it was at the Greenwater Aquarium Society, and they were talking about breeding soft water fish. And one of the things that really stood out to me is they were talking about how the eggs have these microscopic, tiny little holes that allow for gas exchange. And what happens with fish that are in harder water than they normally would be is those holes get clogged with minerals, and then the gas exchange stops, and then the eggs fungus up and they die. So I would start with water parameters and make sure that your water parameters are in fact conducive to the fish breeding. The second thing is sometimes it takes some time to figure things out. I know with our severums and with angelfish, we had that happen with both of them where it was like, okay, it took them a few times to figure out, okay, maybe the male's just not doing a good job of fertilizing the eggs. Maybe, you might start to see some eggs fungus up. When they really turn like a solid white, that tends to spread fairly quickly. And then after that, now maybe the female's kind of picking those off. And then the other thing too is if you've got any plecos in there, you didn't mention that, so maybe you don't, but any type of pleco is going to eat them. I don't necessarily know if the cories would they eat them? Maybe if they had a chance, but the thing there too is if you have eggs with any like South Central American where they're egg layers, that's when I try to leave a light on in the room. I do not leave the tank light on, and it's not a bright light, so it's not going to be like a room light like you have in here, but a very dim light. And what that allows is the parents to see any potential threats. And so if the cory cats were kind of sneaking in there or something was in there that maybe was trying to get at the fry or the eggs, they can see that coming as opposed to the room being in pitch black darkness and now they're having a harder time dealing with that. So start with water parameters. And if that's in line, then it could just be the male needs a little bit more time to figure things out. And in the end, it could just be the fact that one of them there's some genetic mutation there where the male might be infertile or the female might be laying eggs that just are also infertile.
So, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed EJ Fishes 76. Hey, Eric. He says, I remember that, Jason. I'm thinking he's referring to the 5 angels for $10. Were you going to bid on them too?
Yeah, I remember Eric he was like, but I thought you got another bag as well with some pretty cool angels that night.
But your bag was 20.
yeah, I think he did. Yeah, I think he did pay twice as much. Sorry about that, dude.
Oops.
And by the way, Eric, EJ Fishes,
76.
He's bred discus successfully, so he could probably chime in there too on that one. So, Eric, I'm going to put you to work, man. If you can help here with the potential issues that Ricky's facing, we'd all be very appreciative. All right, what else we got here?
Here, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, Jesse. Question. Hey guys. My Odessa barbs have laid eggs in the separate tank I had set up for them. The eggs seem to be really white and are starting to fungus.
Yeah.
Are they all bad?
Yes, most likely. Yeah, they are. Usually the eggs, once they get that solid white, and they almost have like a harder appearance, and the fungus happens, they're done. Now, if you've still got viable eggs and can separate them, you might still have a chance. But usually, once that happens, they're probably done. The way to get around that with a lot of the barbs, if you've got a spawning mop and you throw them in a separate tank, and then there's a couple things you can do there with a little bit of methylene blue. One of the things that I learned in one of the Greater Chicago Sickle Association, we went to a bag swap, and some of the guys who like really breed hardcore, I was having problems with my severum eggs fungusing. Like same problem, Ricky, that you're having is just they just didn't hatch. And they said, hey, listen, take them out, put them in a 10-gallon with an air stone and use hydrogen peroxide. And they were using like a cap of hydrogen peroxide. Now don't quote me on the volumes here, but from my recollection, please don't blame me if you wind up losing fish for this, but from my recollection, they said, I think they were using roughly a capful of hydrogen peroxide in a 10-gallon, or maybe it was a 5. Now I don't remember, but it was doing a better job than the hydrogen or than the methylene blue of keeping the fungus away. And often that can also be a water flow issue as well.
Gary O'Neill, hi, from Dublin, Ireland.
Wow.
It's like 2:30 in the morning over there. Good morning.
You're having a Wednesday night party / Thursday morning. Thanks for being here. That's awesome. I appreciate it.
Thanks for all your great knowledge. You have helped me a lot in the hobby. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. It's awesome. That's so cool. I mean, that's what's cool about this community, guys. You look around, like people from all over the world. That's the awesomeness of our community. Right? From all over the place.
Sylvia's from Kilkenny. Cool.
That's a long ways away.
Yeah.
All right, what else we got? You're supposed to be the chat person.
I'm doing really good here, right? I've done the last 3.
Okay, wait, here, I've got one. Wait, something happened. Where did it go?
Oh, here. Did you get that question? Donna has a question. How many mystery snails do you need to get a pair to potentially get more? Lav, you want to get that?
How many mystery...
Lav snails in the house.
Oh,
so,
yeah. How many mystery snails do you need to potentially get more?
1.5. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. As
Figure
long
that
as
one
you've got a, male and a female, that's the hard part, right? Hold on a second. I saw one. All right, you keep going. Give me some questions here.
Okay. Oh, here we go. All right. Cynthia. Nano question. 7.5 gallon cube. Planted tank. Nice. Has 7 dwarf cories. Cute. 3 Amano shrimp and 2 neurites. Water parameters are great. 0 AMM, 5 ppm nitrates. The tank looks kind of empty. Can I add more cories? How many?
Wait, you said nano, so I was kind of drowning you out thinking that you were going to answer the question, so I wasn't actually listening.
No, it's not a plant question. And more cories.
All right, hold on, because multi-tank addiction asked, no filter, no substrate, empty tank on that larger tank, just water. Then give it time. If you don't have fish in there, let's give it a week or even longer and see if that clears up. Because if it's just your water, you did say wood tank, so I'm assuming that you coated. I mean, you obviously would. If there's nothing in there, then it just, let's try to give it a week or so. Be patient with it and see if it clears up. Most of the time it will. I mean, most of the time you don't see a cloudy tank that stays cloudy forever, right? 6 years later, it's like, yeah, man, I'm still giving it time. He said to, but it's still cloudy. I don't know what's going on. All right, what you got?
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
The question I already gave you.
Oh, well, I wasn't listening. So you got to show. How many did she say it more than once? Now you're getting the real. See, this is not good because now you're actually getting like what happens like for real in our home.
This is like it's every day, bro. Okay.
Okay.
Cynthia.
Yes.
This is a nano question.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
If it was a question for me, I would just
right.
read it in my head.
All right,
okay.
all right.
7.5 gallon cube planted tank has 7 dwarf cories, 3 Amano shrimp, and 2 neurites. The water parameters are great. 0 AMM, 5 ppm nitrates. The tank looks kind of empty. Can I add more cories? If so, how many?
7
7
dwarf. Are we talking about pygmy cories?
Oh, they're dwarf cories. I assume they were pygmies.
I don't know if I would add more of the cories. It's a 7.5 gallon. You got 7 in there now.
You don't have anything like in the
Yeah, I would say
there.
maybe you'd want to look at potentially some like smaller rasboras. I mean, they've got some of the rasboras are pretty like the
ones I got with my cories. I always forget their names. What are they?
Rasboras?
No, the
white clouds. Yeah, that can work, but if there's a heater in that tank and the temperature's kind of high. But check out the smaller rasboras. You might be able to do like a half a dozen of those, and that will kind of give it some action in the middle, and it won't look so empty.
Yeah.
Right? Could you put a few more if they're pygmy cories? Probably. I wouldn't go necessarily crazy with it, but yeah. All right. One of the questions I saw, and now I don't remember who asked it, so I'm sorry, but the question was, how do you find fish clubs in your area? And that's a good question. Because I just talked about, oh man, all these crazy, awesome benefits. And it's not easy. Usually you just have to go and look up your specific area. Like, are there any tropical fish clubs or cichlid clubs or aquatic plant clubs and then type in your area. Because that's
what you're going to look like when you
and just type in your area. Right? But when I did that, I mean, this is going back many, many years, but I heard that there was this thing called fish clubs, and then that's kind of what I did. But I'm not aware. Maybe somebody else is. If you know of like a centralized location, I thought at one point that Aquarium Co-op was keeping a list on their website. I don't know if he's still doing that.
Somebody did mention that.
Yeah, so check aquariumcoop.com. Because I'm fairly sure, I know for a fact that a number of years ago, this is going back 3 or 4 years, that he was trying to aggregate a list of fish clubs in the United States. So might be worth a check, just kind of search around there and see if it's still there.
Okay, I've got 2 questions here that I don't want to forget. Okay. First of all, these are regarding pet stores kind of around our area. Okay. I know I haven't been here, but have you? Whips World says, have either of you made your way down to Animal Island in Midlothian?
Yes, I
Really?
have. I've been there, and I know people who have been there. And yeah, again, I haven't been there in a long time, so I can't speak to, are they awesome? Are they not awesome? It's been a long time, but yeah, I've been there.
Okay.
Finn Wiggles, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
What is your experience with medicated flake food? My once thriving 3-month-old Goldie Fry are showing signs of wasting. When it comes to internal parasites, there is no better option. And the reason for that is when you add medication to water, a very small percentage of that medication, when it's antibiotics or anti-parasite drugs, a very small percentage of that actually gets into the system, and in the active components actually get into the gut. All right. So I always tell people, if you even think that your fish have internal parasites and they are still eating the medicated flakes, trust me, that is the way to go before they stop eating. Because if that parasite, or if that wasting, or if that bloat gets even worse, and now you're trying to treat the tank with basically antibiotics or anti-parasitic drugs in the water, that becomes a much more difficult task because you're dosing a lot of meds to try to get that small percentage into the fish. So if they're eating and you want to try to do like a metronidazole medicated flake, that would be a far more effective thing, provided that the parasite is susceptible to something like metronidazole or whatever antibiotic infused flake you're going to use. But they also have to eat that relatively quickly too, because if that flake food is just sitting in there even for a few minutes, a lot of times that antibiotic will just wind up in the water anyway. But if they're eating and there's an internal parasite, that can be one of the most effective things to do to get that to go away. Thank you. The chili raspberries stay really small. Yeah, and that was one of the ones I was thinking about. And yeah, the chili raspberries for that 7.5 would be a really good one. All right, let's see here. What else we got? Debbie asks, what are the best nano fish for a 5-gallon?
I'm sorry. Myrtle. LOL, I can imagine Jason typing like that on a computer.
That's how I do it.
That's exactly what he looks like.
Actually, it's more like I don't use all my fingers. I basically use like 2 and a thumb, but I'm pretty good at it.
Everybody uses different.
Yeah, I remember they tried to teach me the right way, so back when I was in like 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah.
And that was like, I don't even know if computers. I think we were actually still learning on typewriters.
I know,
or like really early computers.
I learned on typewriter.
And I just couldn't do it, so I gave up. Anyway, Debbie, what are the best nano fish for a 5-gallon? I have some ideas.
So do I.
Okay, so name one.
Well, guppies.
That idea is horrible. No, guppies are for a 5?
Endlers.
Yeah, endlers. A small group of endlers, I think.
Very small.
Yeah.
But ember tetras, possibly.
Yeah. They're not overly active. Again, like the small rasboras, like the chili rasboras, celestial pearl danios.
Oh yeah. Of course, Heteroidea formosa.
Yeah, that was one I thought you were going to say. The Florida least killifish.
Yeah.
Now, they're not super colorful, but they're cool. Yeah. I also like the lamp-eye rasbora. I like sparkling gouramis because they're not super crazy overly active. But I'd probably only do one in a 5-gallon and maybe pick some other fish. Just because sometimes in a small tank, they start to chase each other around and there's not really much place for them to go. Like they worked out really well in your 12 long.
I prefer sparkling gouramis in a group of 3 or more, 3 to 5, because otherwise sometimes they don't come out and you don't get to see your little sparkling friends.
So all of those are potential options. I'm trying to think of anything else for a 5 that I really like. A mystery snail, I think would be kind of cool, interesting.
Shrimp.
If you are really on your game and you're comfortable with keeping stable water parameters, the Neocaridina shrimp are pretty cool. If you've got really soft water that has a lower pH, the Caridina shrimp can be okay. But again, you have to, especially for the Caridina, you have to be able to keep pretty consistent water parameters in a smaller volume.
Okay, I got a really important question here.
All right.
This is good. I've never been asked this before, but this is awesome. James. Joanna, what should I name my new Betta? That's a fun question. Well, you have to tell me what what kind is he or she, and name some favorite things that you have, like your favorite show or your favorite character, whatever. You like Raymond Reddington or something, or just let me know. Give me some hints.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. More questions. I'm looking through here. You're supposed to be the question mark. Hold on. Sylvia, my Betta has started to swim in a stiff and jerky manner, not swim bladder. Any ideas on what could cause this stiff and jerky manner? So always, and I know I sound like a broken record, but when there is fish illness, I always start with water parameters. And so I did a whole video on, are your water parameters making your fish sick? Because when we discussed at length in my aquaculture and fish health master's program the importance of water parameters, and that is water temperature. And sometimes people overlook things like, okay, is the water temperature proper? Did my heater break? Sometimes people don't understand or don't realize, man, my heater's broken, and holy cow, my tank that's supposed to be at 78 is down to 68 degrees, and that's causing other issues. That could be causing fungal issues. That could be causing fish to stop eating. That can be causing stress that eventually leads to all kinds of things. So I check water parameters first. And so is my temperature okay? Am I zero ammonia? Am I zero nitrite? Have I been doing okay with my nitrates and they're consistently around 20 parts per million or less? That's the first step. Then I start looking at, okay, now if all of that's fine, the truth is, it's really hard to determine exactly what's causing the disease unless you do a fecal smear if it's internal parasite. Maybe you've got to do a gill biopsy. And we don't talk about that enough in fish keeping, that when we're dealing with fish illness, short of those diagnostic tests, we're just guessing, right? And I'm going to talk a lot more about that this year and how that can cause problems, because I don't know. I don't know what's causing it. If I go back on, stiff, puffy lips, stringy poop. So there's definitely puffy lips, stringy poop, lips falling off, one end ended up dying. Yeah, that sounds like you've got a number of things going on there. There could be stringy poop means that there's something internal. It almost sounds like a bacterial thing. And a lot of times when it comes to bacterial, it stems from some type of water issue. And so with something like that, that's where you're dealing with, okay, can I go back to the medicated flakes? Can I do erythromycin? Can I do an antibacterial and see if that works? But without doing those diagnostics, it's very difficult to say, okay, this is the thing that's wrong. Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this one I can answer. Daniel, do you personally rinse out your substrate when starting a new tank? Was thinking I might wash out the pH buffer. No, we don't usually rinse out our substrate.
Not when it's store-bought.
Yeah.
The only time that I do that is like if pool filter stand, that stuff has got to be rinsed, because if you were to throw that in a tank, you would not be able to see from the front of your tank to the back. But most of the store-bought stuff, and the gravel's easy. You can certainly rinse that off. But when you get into sand, the best you can do, it's messy. You throw it in a 5-gallon bucket. So when I'm rinsing sand, whether it's pool filter sand or if you wanted to rinse just standard aquarium sand, the easiest way to do that is take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it about halfway to 3/4 of the way with the sand, if that's how much sand you have. Take a garden hose and shove that hose all the way to the bottom of the bucket and let it go. And what's going to happen is it's going to create that pressure, and it's going to push all the nasty stuff and the small, tiny little particulate matter and the cloudiness up to the top, and then drain it, rinse just the top water off, and keep doing that, and then really just kind of stir that sand around. Once it gets wet and that hose is really running, you can kind of get it to move around a little bit. Mm-hmm. But like for the pool filter sand, for me, that takes like 15-20 minutes of doing that. That's why I stopped using it. It just wasn't worth the hassle anymore.
Yeah.
But you'll find, like I have found, when I was doing that with a lot of the store-bought sand, there was nothing showing up in the bucket. Like it wasn't cloudy or anything. And then I'm like, well, I'm not going to waste my time doing this. So we just started chucking it right in the tank, and we never had any issues. Now, I'm not saying you won't. So if you want to be more cautious, that's the way I would rinse sand. Gravel's super easy. That you can just put in a strainer, put it over the sink, and rinse that out, and kind of put your hand through there. But again, we very rarely ever have issues. At least I can't recall having an issue because of it. No. Multi-tank addiction, thank you again for the super chat. Thanks, Jason, for the help. It started to cloud today. Yeah, so give it a few days, just because that's normal, right? I mean, when a lot of times when you're setting up a new tank, it'll look really bright and bubbly and everything for the first 12 13 hours and you go to bed, you wake up in the morning like, oh, come on, man, why is it like that? And then it takes a few days to do its thing. So, all right, Fin Wiggles, is that right?
Yep.
Thank you again for
Thanks,
the super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're going to get that. Okay.
All right. Hold on. Legend Fish Tanks. Is it possible for Mbuna to hybridize with peacocks because I have both in my tank? It's possible. In fact, there's a group of people in the cichlid world that think a lot of the original OBs were probably a mix of, at some point in the line, some type of hybridization between Mbuna and some peacocks. And it's one of the reasons why some of the OBs can be really, like the generic OBs, can be really aggressive. In fact, that I would say of all the fish we've kept, my OBs have been some of the more aggressive fish that we've had in terms of African cichlids, to the point where I prefer to put the OBs in with my Mbuna cichlids, not really in with my peacocks. So it's possible, I suppose, but it's unlikely. I have found, and this is not going to hold true 100% of the time, but I have found, at least for the Mbuna, they really do, as long as there's a male and a female of the same species, and they're not like really super close related species. Like I don't have a tank full of metroclima or something like that, but like yellow labs will breed with yellow labs, red zebras stay with their own, Johannis are over there breeding with their own, and ACI are breeding, within that species. Now, if you've got really closely related species, like, I don't know, you got 3 different melanochromis in there, then yeah, they're going to hybridize fairly easily. But for the peacocks and the Mbuna, I have never had that happen. I'm not saying it can't, but I think it's relatively rare. Peter O'Brien, thank you so much for this super chat. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Okay, so let's see.
Can we say hi to Mary Page?
Hey, Mary Page.
She's here.
Glad you're here. Angelfish Haven. Yes, I noticed one of my heaters was unplugged and temps were low. I have been treating with Medflakes, but not for bacteria, so I'll try that route as well. Yeah, so the temperature thing is, and that's something that could be easily overlooked. I did that myself. I had the 37 gallon at one point was sitting next to the basement window. This is way before we had a lot of tanks, so I think maybe at the time we only had 12. And the 37 gallon was sitting in front of the basement window. And there was, I had the daffodil pulchers in there, which is a really pretty Lake Tanganyikan fish. I had some Bifronatus in there, and possibly some caudopunks. So they're all Lake Tanganyikan cichlids. And they're really pretty sensitive to temperature changes and changes, ammonia and things, and the heater broke. And I didn't notice it for like 3 or 4 days. The reason I noticed it is I would put food in and they wouldn't eat. And they weren't very active. So one of the things that will usually tip you off, if your heater's broken, and it's not like you're checking, and when you get a bunch of tanks, it's not like you're trying to check temperatures on every tank every single day. If you notice that all of your fish suddenly stop eating, and you haven't introduced any new fish lately, so there's no reason to assume a parasite, they stop eating, they become a lot less active, just put your finger in the water. Well, put your finger in the water if it's cold, or put your hand up to the side of the tank, and if it's cold, your heater might be broken. Now, the thing is, when you get a new heater, don't just crank that bad boy up to 78 and then warm the temperature up from 65 to 78 in a couple hours, because that will stress the fish out. But I wound up losing a lot of those Lake Tanganyikan fish after that heater died on me. And it took a little while. Like I got a new heater, and then within a day or two, it didn't matter.
James, if it were me, I would name him Doodle.
Doodle?
The Golden Doodle.
The Golden Doodle.
The
Who's that? This is my fish, the Golden Doodle. It sounds kind of cool. It does. Orphan Slayer 77. I've got a planted 40 gallon, and I'm planning on putting 6 stir-by-cories and 10 flame or glow light tetras. Could I put 5 or 4 Bolivian rams with the other fish, or is that overstocking? 40 gallon? Yeah, I think that's fine. You got 6 stir-bys, and then 10 tetras in a 40 gallon with 4 Bolivians. The only thing that you'll have to think about is what happens when your Bolivian rams start to breed. A 40 gallon, you could theoretically have 2 pairs in there, one each pair taking a side of the tank. With a 3-foot tank, that's probably going to be enough space, especially if it's a nicely planted tank. But just kind of keep that into consideration. Know that anytime you've got multiple cichlids, especially 4 or 5, the likelihood that you have at least one male and one female is very high. And so what are you going to do if they breed? Do you care? Like, do you want the fry to survive? Because I'll tell you right now, those tetras will pick them off eventually, right? They're quick, and they'll sneak in there and they'll just grab the little babies. Even though the parents try to do a good job of keeping them around, most likely if you did nothing with the fry, the tetras will pick off most of them. But just something to think about, right? Let's see here. What do we got?
Pin wiggles. I think she's saying, wait, you just moved it.
Sorry.
Daring doodly doo.
Okay. Like it.
Love it.
Let's see here. What else we got? Jesse, this has been one of my favorite streams so far. I've learned so much from you guys tonight. Super helpful information. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jesse. Appreciate you being here. Glad you learned something. Hopefully that's something that happens for some people. Ripple in Water. Thank you so much for the super chat. Love your channel, Jason and Joanna. Got to go now. Bye. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Marty, love the sticker. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Look at him. He's so cute.
He
Thanks,
is a
Marty.
cute little guy. That's the thank you guy. Marty may be too. I don't know. Let's see. Legend Fish tanks. How many Maltese in a 10-gallon? They'll be upgraded to a 20-gallon. Maltese in a 10. So it depends on how quickly you're going to upgrade. If you're talking 6 months or a year from now, you probably just want, hopefully get a pair and then start separating the fry as they happen. If you're talking, hey, I'm going to put the Maltese in for 4 weeks and not quite full adults yet, most likely they'll be okay. Give them lots of shells and actually give them a fair amount of rock work, because a 10-gallon for Maltese for multiples is going to be a bit of a challenge to manage the aggression, because while they're not overly aggressive, they do like to have their personal space. Now the 20 gallon is going to be awesome for them, especially if it's a 20 long. That will give them space where you could easily put in 6, let them breathe. Like we've got a 20 long right now full of Similis, which are very similar to Maltese. And I think I started with 6 or 8, and there's probably 30 of them in there right now. They're fine. They're getting along. Nobody's getting beat up. But a 10 can be a little tricky. But I might start with, if it's going to be a relatively quick turnaround, you could probably go 4, maybe 6, but just give them some area to call their own. What? You got something?
Yeah, I do. All right. Fin Wiggles. I saw a teeny tiny red worm wiggling through the water. Should I assume it's a Camelinus red worm? I'm not pronouncing that right.
So it depends. I don't know if I'd necessarily assume that. Most of the worms that we get that are that color are detritus worms, and if you look, especially in gravel, and so that often happens. Like we'll get those sometimes we had them really bad one time in our super red bristlenose tank, because bristlenose apparently don't like to eat them, and we were feeding relatively heavily, and it was when we were feeding a lot of Repashy. Repashy is a great food, but I think we were putting too much of it in, and that Repashy, after a while, it starts to fall apart, and it was getting into the substrate, and so we had a lot of detritus worms. They don't tend to swim around though, so maybe it might be the Camelinus worm, but keep an eye on that tank and look for more. Look, especially in the substrate. If you're starting to see a bunch in the substrate, then I wouldn't worry as much. Most likely then it's just the detritus worms that are hanging out, little extra food, and then a lot of gravel vacuum will do well. I mean, we had those things so bad one time, that super red bristlenose tank, they would clog up the gravel vac. We'd put it in, we'd suck them up, and then we'd have to kind of shake the gravel back and put them into the bucket. We control the feeding, and then eventually they all went away. So let's see here. Finis 08, am I saying that right? Finis 08?
I think so.
All right, we'll go with that. I bought a 29 gallon and a 20 long. After watching your videos, I am planning to breed Caudopunctatus. Going to get a group of 5 and see what pairs up. Should I start them out in the 20 or the 29? Both are fine. Like I said, all of our breeding Caudopunctatus, Neolamprologus caudopunctatus, they are an absolutely fantastic lake Tanganyikan fish. If you haven't seen them, I did a species profile on them. They are awesome fish. They don't get very big. Males top out around 2.5 inches in most cases. We've been breeding ours in a 20 high, and we started out pretty much the way you did. I think we had 5 or 6 in a 20 high and wound up with, I don't even know, 30 or 40. I then took a group out of there, put them in another 20 high, and now I've got 30 or so in that tank. So in terms, you're in better shape than I am because you've got a little bit more space for them. But I just, in that size group, I have not found them to be particularly aggressive. What they'll do is they'll show off a lot. And so you'll see, especially the females, especially when they're protecting eggs, they'll get that head down sort of look and they'll swim kind of head down. And then you'll see these like instantaneously. It's so cool. They get these dark bars and they kind of chase the other fish back. And when the other fish sees that, like, oh man, she's serious. Let me get out of this area. And that's been the extent of the aggression. So I know that there are some sources that say that they'll eat their fry. I found that to be true in some cases where they might eat the first batch, but then after that, they just breed. They will get to a critical mass though. So in your 20 long, once you do have like 30 or 40, I have found that no further breeding takes place until you move them out and get yourself back down to that smaller group. And so I found that in both of our tanks, once they get to a couple of batches of fry, that's it. There's just too many fish in there, and the rest of the fry don't survive. Okay. Joe likes fishes. Or anyone else. Primetime Aquatics or anyone else. The gold rams are new and not... Uh-oh. And then the thing went away. Gold rams they've been around for a little while. I think they're absolutely beautiful. We featured them on one of our Aquashella videos, and then also when we did the APET tour. They had a couple tanks full of them that were really pretty. They might be my favorite type of ram, is the gold rams. Finn Wiggles, thank you for the sticker. #1 fan. So wait, can you, with the stickers, I don't actually know much about the stickers. Can you type in whatever? I guess you can type in whatever you want on the sticker. That's kind of cool. So very cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, let's see here. Let's see. I'm looking for a question.
I think the names for gold, James, this will haunt me thinking of better names too. Something like saffron.
Saffron for a name of a fish?
Sure. Well,
That's too complicated.
I don't usually think of, or topaz. Oh, topaz.
So now we're just going colors, huh? Why don't you just call them purple?
No, topaz is a gem.
What color is the Betta?
Gold? Golden?
Then call them purple. It'll really mess people up. Hey, who is that? Oh, that's my Betta purple.
No.
Why'd you call him that? Can't tell you. Dizzle Rizzle, I can't find a Pistos to save my life.
Dizzle Rizzle.
A Pistos. Where to find a Pistos? I mean, the big places usually have them, like the Wet Spot. I mean, that place, you look at their list, you can easily get lost. They've got probably 4 or 5 different types. Aquatic Clarity would be a place. I don't know what his shipping schedule is like. I actually did a fish room tour of Aquatic Clarity. They're based out of Wisconsin. We did like a whole, that was another thing cool. That was cool. We went to like a GCCA store hop and stopped in there. He had a lot of really cool epistles. That was the place where I saw the Epistogramma Panduro, and instantly I knew I had to have them. So Aquatic Clarity, try to maybe check them out and see. Like I said, I don't know what shipping schedule thing he's got going on. Okay. Cruddy BTW, I recently got a new clown pleco, and I was wondering if you had any tips or something to expect. We actually have, believe it or not, I haven't really shown them, although I guess I kind of did in the fish room tour part 2, very briefly. We have a bunch that were in quarantine for a while. They can come out of quarantine now. They've been in that quarantine tank for like 6 weeks, maybe longer. I got 10 or 12 of them, but we've actually had clown plecos in our 75 for that. Those fish are old. I mean, they're probably at this point at least 10 years old. Now the clown plecos, at least from our experience, and maybe others have experienced something different, I have found them to hide a little bit more than, like, let's say a bristlenose, so they don't tend to be as visible. They're absolutely beautiful. You know, they get the brown and the black stripes, and they stay smaller. And so a lot of times I will recommend them for people who have like 10-gallon tanks, but they want an algae eater type fish. And for whatever reason, they don't want otos. But like at that point, it's like, okay, the bristlenose full grown, that's a 5 or 6 inch fish that really doesn't belong in a 10-gallon. If we go pleco, the clown pleco can be the way to go. The females they tend to get a little chubbier, and they're really quite peaceful in terms of plecos, at least in my experience. But I actually thought that our clown plecos in our 75 were no longer with us, because there was a time where it might have been 2 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't see them. And then like all of a sudden they started coming out more in our 75. I'm like, huh, there they are. And now I see them at least once a week. But there was a 2-year period of time, never saw them. So, but they're really cool.
David has a question.
Yes.
Before a tank cracks, does it show signs?
Ooh. Before a tank cracks. If a tank cracks and you're not there, did it really happen?
You'll find
if
out
a tank cracks in the forest, did it really happen? Does it show
not.
signs? It depends. There's 2 things that you're looking for. One is for tanks that have the center brace. If that thing is broken, a lot of times people don't realize that the front or the back pane can actually be bowing out. So if you have a tank that had a center brace and it's cracked, or someone decided in their infinite wisdom, like, I'm going to make this tank rimless. I'm just going to pull off the top frame, and that center brace isn't there anymore. Fill it up, and then you go to the side, the edge of the tank, and look right down the front or the back of the tank and see if it's doing one of these. You'd be surprised. So sometimes that will happen. If the frame itself is cracked, not just the center brace, that can also happen. The other thing that you're looking for is the silicone. Is it, like for us, we've got our 75 gallon, our bottom one. It's an all glass 75. I got it from my uncle probably 20 years ago. And I remember him telling me when I got it, he's like, yeah, this is one of my older tanks, but you can, go ahead and take it. I think he had it for like at least 15 years. So that tank, I'm not saying this is wise. It's probably a really bad idea. And someday I'll probably make a video. Remember that one time I was talking on a live stream? Yeah, I got 75 gallons of water on my floor. But that tank, to my knowledge, has never been resealed. But it needs to be, because now some of the silicone is starting to go away. Like how you got the corners. Well, some of it's starting to go away a little bit. So that's the other thing you're looking for. The third thing is, and it's not necessarily the tank, but it's the stand. You want to make sure that your tank is on a stand where it's level. And that's not usually a problem with store-bought stands. But if you, let's say, I just bought a tank from some guy and he built his own stand. That can especially happen with larger tanks, where you get people who are like, yep, I got this 180. Didn't trust the stands at the store, so I went and built my own. And now you go and you show up, you're like, huh, that stand, you start looking at it, right? You start looking at the wood. It's like, it's not quite perfect. Little changes can put, especially on a larger tank, can put a lot of stress on the seams. And so that's the other thing you're looking for, is just making sure that your stand, the wood, what it's resting on, it's flush. Because if it's not, that too can be a problem. So those are the things I generally look for.
Okay.
All right.
Karen?
Yes.
Is a question.
Okay.
Would a Betta be okay in a 7-gallon with shrimp? Heavily planted with a couple pieces of driftwood the shrimp can hide in.
So adult shrimp, maybe. Shrimplets, you're probably not going to see a lot of breeding.
Bye shrimplets.
Yeah, the shrimplets will probably be gone. The adults, I don't know. It depends on the Betta, because we've had Bettas where even like with mystery snails, they were fine, but in 90% of the time they're fine. And then you get those 10% of the time where it's like, seriously, this Betta is going to be picking at this mystery snail. Now I got to remove it, right? Yeah. So with shrimp, you just never know that prey drive of that Betta. To reduce the likelihood, I would probably make sure that the Betta is well fed, not overfeed it, because the last thing you want is like food all over the place. Now you've got stuff rotting in your tank. But definitely make sure, hey, I'm going over there a couple, 2-3 times a day. Little sprinkle, he eats, he's fine. He's that prey drive might be reduced, because why do you want to chase shrimp around when you got a full belly sort of thing? It's hit or miss. Yeah. Geek mashup. Pea puffer, 5-gallon. Thoughts?
Pea puffer.
Yeah, a single pea puffer, that can work. We had 3 of them in a 5-gallon.
Yeah.
At one point.
And very soon afterwards, within days, there were only 2.
Yeah, but then the pair lived in there for a long time.
Yeah.
And then the male started to chase the female a little bit more aggressively, and so we moved the pair into a 12-gallon. But this 12-gallon is 3 feet long, and they're perfectly fine. But one in a 5-gallon, absolutely. I mean, they're not active. That's a really good option, in fact. I'm surprised when they were asking that you didn't say that. Remember the good options for a 5-gallon? in a pea puffer. You're like
Yeah.
one of your favorite fish didn't even pop in your brain.
I love pea puffers. I know.
Why don't we
I'm
all
ashamed.
express our disappointment in the live chat about your
I'm
failure
ashamed. Go
to
ahead.
put
Let
the
me
pea
have it.
puffer as part
Let
of
me
a
have it.
5-gallon?
I'm
Yeah.
not a really good pea
I just
puffer
wouldn't do
mom.
more than 1 in a 5. I think you'll be okay.
Usually they say 5 gallons per pea puffer.
Yep. George Costanza. I love it. George Costanza. Squinting. I'm squinting. That's what I do. I can squint like George Costanza, then I can see anything. Look, there's a dime over there on the floor.
Oh, it does help.
Squinting? Of course it does. That's
No,
how
you
I
don't
live
need
my
your
life.
glasses. You can just look through
look.
like a really tiny little hole, and
I'm
you
not
can
doing
see.
that because then I just
It's
assume
a
wear the
little
glasses.
trick that I have.
All right,
He doesn't
George,
believe
can
me.
I answer George Costanza's question? Make sure you use, actually,
Levels, Jerry,
turns out it's
levels.
not even a question. Make sure you use a level when setting up your tank stand. Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially when a lot of times people underestimate if they've never put fish tanks like in a basement and that basement has a floor drain. By design, your floors in your basement are not supposed to be level. They're supposed to drain water into the floor drains and into those sump drains so that if something ever floods, it's just going in the right direction. So works out good if you overflow a tank or like you guys will love this, the first people to know. The other day, I walked down in the basement and our 50-gallon lowboy, the Molly tank, has got the Seachem 35, Title 35 on there. Well, the bottom little sponge thing, I apparently, by one of my wonderful child employees, forgot to clean that thing. He said just 1 week. I think it might have been like 3 weeks. Well, that clogged. And then he really wanted to make sure the tank was well filtered. So he put too much filter floss in there too. And so guess what happened? The water started coming out of the back. And we lost about that much water in a 50-gallon lowboy, which is probably 5 to 7 gallons on the floor.
Whoops.
The moral of the story is that water pretty much all ran right into the floor drain, except for a little bit of wet carpet that had to be shampooed by said employee. Moral of the story is when you're putting up tanks in a basement, you're not going to have a level floor, and so you're going to have to possibly shim it a little bit just to make sure that your stand is level. And that can be kind of a joy because it's all different depending on where it is in the basement, depending on how many floor drains you have. What you got?
All right. Jerry, Wong, hi you guys. Love the channel. First time catching the live stream. Welcome. Hey. Okay. Hold on. Wait.
Hold on. My mouse is frozen, so I'm
wait.
in trouble here.
All right, good.
Good.
All right.
Oh, here we go.
Geek. I got 2 more pea puffer questions. Hastings. I think of Paro and Hastings. Hastings. I thought pea puffers were supposed to be in groups of 6.
In a larger tank, they can work but I wouldn't do that unless I was probably in 20 long.
Yeah.
Then that works great. But if you've got them in a small tank, if that's what you want, then I wouldn't do that. But you're absolutely right. In a larger tank, if you get enough of them, then that works out pretty good. Mm-hmm. I see a super chat. Actually, I see it over here. $2. Thank you. Hold on. Kaloy 102. Love the channel so much. Favorite fish channel. Thank you. Appreciate it. I really appreciate you being here. Appreciate the super chat and the support. All right. Oh, look, now that all popped back up again.
All right, wait. Geek Mashup's asking another question. What would you recommend to put in a pea puffer tank?
What's the size?
It was a 5-gallon.
Still the 5-gallon?
I think so.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. So if it's a 5-gallon with a pea
think,
puffer,
right?
a couple things. The nice thing, at least in my opinion, is a pea puffer is probably going to eat snail. So if you've got a small little snail supply, that would be an awesome thing because then you're not as worried about the pea puffer losing out on food. All right. So with a pea puffer and a 5, you could do again, and I keep going back to this because I just think for the small nano tanks it works out. You can do the smaller rasboras like the chilies, like the lamp eyes, maybe. I think things like endlers might stress it out a little bit. They're a little bit too active.
I had clown killies at the top. Remember that?
Yeah. And then with your pea puffers, in fact, didn't you have endlers and pea puffers together in that 5-gallon for a little while? What was in there besides the pea puffers?
I had the killies.
That was the killies. Okay. The clowns?
Clown killies.
Yeah, that worked.
I just said. Yeah. I didn't have very many.
The pygmy cory cats, maybe. Yeah, I mean, you're kind of somewhat limited. It worked out for a little while with a dwarf gourami. That worked. Fleur-de-lis killies would probably work, something really small like that. You want to just stay small and make sure that they're not going to be nipping at the puffer and the puffer can't catch them. Okay, let's see. Yeah, she said, or Geek Mashup said, still a 5-gallon. My mouse is doing something really weird. So if I'm like messing up the super chat or I'm looking over here, it's because I have to rely now on my other screen because it's sticking. And it makes me worry that at some point this computer's going to crash. It's not even like doing the right thing. Okay, hold on. Let's see here. I saw a question, but I'm having a hard time getting to these questions now. Jerry asks, I've heard that gravel vacuum can disturb the gravel and stir up the things in the tank, adding to nitrate other bad things in the tank. Is that true? I have found the opposite, Jerry. And so, in fact, we did a video on maintaining, why you should, like 7 reasons or 13 reasons why you should gravel vac a tank. If there's two different things here. If the tank is planted, I generally don't gravel vac around any plants or where I think any plant roots might be growing. So I would rather all that fish waste, as long as it's not excessive, that's your fertilizer for your plants. And so I tend not to disturb that. If I do not have any plants in that tank, then I will gravel vac all the way to the bottom glass, and I will gravel vac the entire tank pretty much every single week. And I have found that when you do that, you're sucking out that waste, and that waste is actually contributing to high nitrate concentrations. And so if you take 2 extremes, you've got non-planted, let's say, you've got 2 of the exact same tanks, they're stocked exactly the same bioload with the same amount of gravel. In one situation, you are just doing, let's say, a 50% water change every week, but you're leaving all that waste and uneaten food in the gravel. Guess what that's doing? That's breaking down. You've got microbes in there that are breaking that food down, and when they do, they're producing more waste, and that's contributing to higher nitrate levels. In the other situation, let's say you do a relatively thorough job of gravel vacuuming and pulling that waste out, there's less bioload in that tank, and therefore nitrate levels are going to remain lower. Not only will that remain lower, but the beauty of it is there will most likely be less algae growth in that tank that is gravel vac compared to the one that isn't. So, because it's got less food for the algae to grow. So that has been my experience, and quite frankly, that's why in our fish room, you can look at our fish tanks behind us every week and say, well, you know what, they look pretty decent. Well, it's not like we're in there with a gravel, with an algae scraper, scraping all the glass and thoroughly cleaning these tanks like crazy. The reason why they stay relatively clean is because in the non-planted tanks, we do the gravel vacuuming, which lowers the nitrate, which makes potential algae issues not as big of an issue, right? So that's kind of where I roll with it. Some say CPDs will work with people. What's the other one? We've got those in our 12-gallon combo right now. Yes, they work just fine. CPDs are not overly active. They're not super fast eaters. They don't stress out the pea puffers. That is a good combination. Thank you so much, Hastings Leonard, for saying that, because that has absolutely been our experience as well.
Wait, here's one.
Okay.
I have a 20-gallon long, and I went to the store, and the employee would not sell me a honey gourami because the tank is too small. Is a 20-gallon long enough for a honey gourami?
Absolutely, yeah. So a honey gourami, I think, would be a minimum tank size, in my opinion, for a honey gourami that I'm comfortable with would be a 10. I think they get a little bit too big and possibly a little bit too inquisitive for anything less, but a 10 or above for a honey gourami, a single one?
Yeah.
Sure. I would say that would be perfectly acceptable. All right, I got to go back to my other screen here because my mouse, I don't know if it's low on batteries or what's going on here, but this thing is like freezing up like every 2 seconds. All right, so
here's one. Largemouth Slasher would like to know. Male molly chases silver dollars. Is that normal?
Yeah. Male mollies can be...
They can be stinkers. They bite my finger when I go in there to get some of my
plants.
They
really can be. So and it's surprising for some people. And not all mollies are super overly aggressive. It depends on the setup. But I think some people are kind of surprised when they get mollies that they can be a little bit more aggressive. So that's normal. I guess depending on the size of the tank too, at some point the silver dollars will probably get large enough and be much faster, but still it's going to stress them out a little bit. All right, I'm looking at, first of all, thank you, Ricky, for the super chat. Here's another one. I bought a guppy trio. Females are pregnant when I bought from the local breeder, but they still haven't had any babies. They are in with 10 shrimp and a 20 long and lots of hornwort. It can take a while, so they can hold those eggs and release them slowly over time. So just have a little bit of patience. I don't know when you bought them, but usually within a couple, 2 to 4 weeks, you'll probably, as long as the fry are surviving, you'll probably start to see them appear. So just give them a little bit of time, and hopefully you have some babies. But you said you got some hornwort, yeah, at the top, and that will certainly help. Keep them well fed. That will also help reduce fry predation. Let's go ahead and answer maybe a couple more questions.
Okay, here's another Molly question. This is a good one.
Okay.
Okay, Heidi would like to know. I keep getting mixed info, so here's my question. Are you ready? You ready? Okay. Why are my mollies obsessed with my heater all of a sudden?
Are they picking at it? If they're obsessed with the heater, that's an interesting thing to be obsessed with. Why would they be obsessed with the heater? Like picking at it, kind of like maybe picking off some biofilm, although biofilm doesn't usually grow on a heater. I don't know, maybe your mollies are just little cray-cray. Pal Joey, you're here, dude. Glad you're here. All right, here, I'm going to wipe off the mouse. But I don't have a mouse pad. But it really worked well on my shirt. Hold on a second. Right.
Oh my gosh.
This is
weird.
It's working.
Do you want to use my mouse pad?
No, but I don't even have a mouse pad. It's on a desk. But
No,
right now, I'm using it on my shirt, on my hand. So this is a little weird. But it's working. Pal Joey, you're the man.
Okay, here.
Hold on.
Try it.
I don't like this mouse. This
I
mouse
don't
pad never
care.
works.
It's a cool mouse pad.
All right, I'm going to try her mouse pad instead of the desk, and we'll see how that does. I'm going with you because you always give good advice. So you've got the good ideas. Pal Joey, it's funny because we kind of see the same way with the hang-on-back filters. He's always asking, why is it that hang-on-back filters, they always have the return and the intake in the exact same place? And I get it. I do, man. I really do. Anthony asks, can angelfish live with fantail goldfish? I probably wouldn't mix them for a couple reasons. And those reasons are, one, your fantail goldfish would prefer a temperature that's probably 10 degrees cooler than the angelfish would prefer. And two, the goldfish are going to be far more active. And they're most likely, over time, going to very much outcompete the angelfish for food. So you got the temperature issue, you've got the food issue, and then the other thing is, depending on how your angelfish behave, some angelfish might like to take some bites out of your goldfish tails. So that's, and by the way, this mouse pad's still not working. It's something going on with the computer.
Okay.
So that's why I wouldn't do it. All right, let's do one more question, and then we're going to try to...
Okay, but this is a second part. Heidi's clarifying. They're rubbing all over the heater. I've never seen them do it before. Or do you think they
rubbing? That's different. Okay, rubbing all over the heater. That could very well be. They may have some kind of a maybe ick. If they're new or you added any new fish to the tank, start keeping an eye on that, because that could just be like the flashing. You might see them start to do that on decorations and stuff. That leads me to believe that maybe, there could be a parasite in there, and often that's ick. So look for that. Keep an eye out for that.
Wait,
hold on.
Clint said something, I think.
What am I doing? Going up?
Yeah, wherever you were just at.
I don't know.
Wait.
Oh, question: if Jason's is a mutt, is he a rescue, Joanna?
Oh yeah.
I think I'm not even that. I'm just like one of those like animals that kind of walk up to the door, you're like, it just keeps coming back. All right, I'll take it in, and then it doesn't go away. Like, that was a big mistake letting him into the house.
Feed him once.
Yeah.
They never leave.
That's right. Ricky, thank you so much again for the super chat. It's been about 1 to 2 months, and they were juveniles. Have them at room temp, so 76 parameters seem to be okay. So hold on a second. What were we? Let me go up here. That was the guppies, right? So we were talking about the guppies again. Had them 1 to 2 months, and they were juveniles. Have them in room temperature, so 76 parameters seem to be okay. So if we're still talking about we're still talking about the guppies. I guess the next question is, if they're juveniles, were they pregnant when you picked them up? Because sometimes female guppies just look kind of round and big, and they could be holding the eggs for quite some time. But a month, that can happen. So give it a little bit of time. All right, so we're going to do one more question. SRZ. I have a 55 gallon with 600 gallon per hour filtration. I'm planning on 20 tiger barbs, 6 coolies, 1 clown pleco. Is this okay Will I be able to add more tigers? It's lightly planted. Thank you. 55 gallons, 600 gallon per hour filtration. So that is more than enough. 20 tiger barbs, 6 coolies, 20 tiger barbs, 20. Tiger barbs in a 55. I would probably stay with the 20. Full grown, they're pretty decently sized. I think 20 is a good amount. It's not so low where it's like, hey, I bought 6 tiger barbs and slowly over time they just picked each other off. So I think you've got a good number there. The 6 coolies, 1 clown pleco. Maybe stay with the 20 and not go any more with that and just see how that works out. Just because at full grown size and their activity level and stuff, that might get to be, it'll be a fun tank to be sure. But it will be an active tank. Okay. I think we've been on for an hour and a half, and this has been a great live stream. I'm so happy that you guys were here.
Yeah.
I hope you found it useful. Again, what we're going to be doing is we've got the video coming out on Friday that I'm hoping that will be a lot of fun for you, where it's a culminating video of an entire playlist. I think it will be something useful. You've got a video coming out on the small scape Saturday morning that is about a pet, according to you.
My only hint.
So that'll be interesting because I have no idea what she's putting out until I actually get the footage. I'm like, okay, this is what it was. So yeah, thank you so much to all the moderators and Clinton Riddle and Mary Page for all that you do and posting all this stuff, and for everybody who super chatted and bought stickers and everybody else who hung out and the great questions. And so I think the plan will be, hopefully, we will see you again next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. I've got another good idea. This is going to be a good one. Next Wednesday's live stream is going to be another one where I think you guys will have a lot of opinions, and I think it'll be a really fun conversation. So we will see you next week. Again, thanks for being here. Now I got to get the mouse over. Hold on. You're getting bonus footage until I can get the mouse.
Boy.
It's jumping around. All right. Oh, no.
Oh, because you have to.
You're getting bonus time. This is really... All right. Bye, everybody. Now I can't... Hold on. We're still not quite there. Let me see if I can hit enter. There we go.
Wouldn't it be funny if the stream